All right, what you're about to watch is an excerpt of a sermon that I did for the church at Ohatch Church of Christ and was recorded here. This is a small portion of that sermon, which I thought may be relevant to you. You may find interesting. But if you'd like to see the greater sermon as a whole, it is also on the channel. And that description of what sermon it'll be will be in the description below. Thanks. Third, unconditional love. Unconditional love. Romans chapter 8, verse 15 and 16. You have received the spirit of adoption as sons by whom we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we are now children of God. The story of your adoption, dear Christian, was not just that Christ kept you from the gates of hell. The story of your adoption was that Christ brought you into himself. He brought you into his family. He welcomes you at his table, that you are now brought around the table of God. I remember the first night that we had the boys and we were able to sit down and eat dinner together as a family. Ariel and I had gone from a newlywed couple one night to the next night having a family that we're sitting around the table with. And what a magical moment that was. What a monumental moment that was for us. And for the boys as well, as new members of our family. There's some talk about this word Abba. And the idea that it was the first sound that children made, like dada, and that's possible. What we know for sure, though, is that it was the name that Christ called the Father. And so here we are told that in a part of this unconditional love, being part of the family of God, that we can use the same name for God, the Father, that Jesus used, that we are brought alongside him as brothers and sisters to use the same name for our Father, the same name for our dad, in that sense, of Abba Father, the same one that Christ used. And the issue is you struggle with the idea of unconditional love, and so do I. The idea that God loves me despite the fact that I sinned again. You struggle with that. And so do I. Because the idea we have, again, an illustration I've used before, but it's profoundly true. The idea we have is that God walked in to adopt us from the orphanage. And he looked at Renee and he said, well, I'm going to adopt him and hopefully he'll figure his life out. Hopefully he'll get things together. Hopefully he'll stop all this sinning business. Of course, God is working in me to do all those things, but I am still a sinner. I still fail. I still make mistakes constantly. And we have this idea that Christ said, or God said, I'm going to pick him, but I hope he's going to turn it around and get better so that I can actually really love him one day. But that's not the picture at all of the Christian gospel. The Christian gospel is that God walked into where you sat as an orphan and said, I know not just every sin he has committed, but I know every sin he is going to commit. And I still choose him. I still want him. There's a special thing about this idea of being called the name that Christ calls the Father, this Abba. I still remember it was in November of the year we got them, about 9 months after we got the boys. Ariel and I never asked them to call us mom and dad, and we were okay if they never did. But they just started calling us mom and dad of their own accord, of their own volition, because something inside them was testifying to them that they were part of this family. They were sharing in our love. And then mom and dad felt appropriate then. This is the idea here, that we are brought so much into the love of God. We are brought so much into the love of God that we get to call him by the name that the natural children call him. We are so alongside that we get to use the same name.